Hello everyone, welcome to the exhibition site of CPHI and PMEC China 2026. Today, we are honored to have General Manager and China Site Head of Cipla Pharmaceutical Co. Limited, Dr. Deepak Hegde, with us for an exclusive interview with CPHI.cn. Hello, Dr. Hegde. Welcome to be here again.
Thank you, Julia.
So, first question, nowadays a new market is forming due to a new and stricter regulatory trend and for geopolitical reasons, especially in China. Generally, what are the trends and features you have spotted taking places on innovative drugs going global? What are the factors that are driving those changes?
Yeah. So, Julia, the views I'll be explaining here, these are my personal views, and these are based on my experience over the past 20 years with China, nothing specifically to do with Cipla as a company.
Okay.
So, thank you for the question. I think it's a very relevant question. There have been a lot of changes that have been happening on the pharmaceutical market nowadays, and especially with respect to the newer drugs. And as China is evolving as one of the major sources for innovation, so some of these drugs are also in the biologic space, which is one of the direct competition between China and US. So there is a lot of political considerations as well. But I think from the drugs point of view, it is very important that all the new drugs reach the patients, because at the end of the supply chain, it doesn't matter whether it is a Chinese patient or it is a US patient. A patient is a patient. So the new drugs should reach. Some of the changes that are taking place in the pharmaceutical industry, especially with respect to approvals, regulatory approvals are getting more and more stricter compared to previously. The FDA is also focusing heavily on the safety of the patients, and as the regulators are getting more experience, their focus on safety is also increasing. So a lot of things that in the pharmaceutical industry which were acceptable earlier are no longer acceptable. There are new standards being set by the regulatory agencies, whether it is the US FDA, whether it is the EMA, or even the NMPA from China. So it is expected that all manufacturers adhere to those new standards, and this is also causing maybe some difficulty to some of the smaller manufacturers who cannot keep pace with the changing regulatory environments. But end of the day, these are positive developments for the patient and the approvals of the drugs from a regulatory point of view.
Okay, there are significant differences in demand for new drugs, competitive landscape, and healthcare policies among markets in Europe, America, Asia, and emerging economies such as Southeast Asia and Latin America. What are key factors should companies consider when selecting target markets overseas? How to achieve precise market positioning?
Yeah, so that's a very relevant question as well, Julia. So one thing to remember is that the pharmaceutical market is not homogeneous across the world. There are very significant differences in the market. North American market constitutes about 50% of the world pharmaceutical markets, and then the rest of the other markets constitute the rest 50%. But even within these different markets, there are very significant differences. For example, the US is has one regulator, which is the US FDA. But when you look at EMA, there are major differences from the different regulatory agencies present across Europe. So when a company, especially for example, if any Chinese company wants to go global from China to go into different markets, I would suggest from experience that it's not advisable to go for all the markets. It should identify specific markets, whether it first wants to go to the US or first wants to go to some countries in Europe. It depends on what are the strengths. Does the company have the regulatory strengths to understand what are the regulatory requirements of each market? This is something the company should decide. Secondly, not just the regulatory requirements. It also depends on the commercial dynamics within each market. So US is a market which is specially driven by insurance. Everything becomes reimbursable. But that may not be the case across all the different markets. China has a very different set of regulations. Similarly, Latin America, African countries, or certain European countries may have very specific requirements. So all of the products may or may not work equally in all the markets. So this kind of a market research needs to be done by the company well ahead of time before deciding to focus on any particular market. This becomes a key for success. Your product may be good, but the commercial considerations may be a totally different ball game. So it is very important to understand the commercial considerations and balance them before deciding to go in for any one particular market.
Okay, China has implemented volume-based procurement for more than 7 years. As now the rules are changing, price will not be the only factor for a product to be more advantaged. Apart from prices, what do you think could make a product differ from other competitors in a category? What strategies are effective for a product to win the market?
Yeah, so VBP or volume-based procurement was one of the major reforms that was carried out by the China government. And like you said, it was first implemented in 2019, December. So now it's about 7 years, more than 7 years since this has actually been working. This reform, like I said, has been one of the major reforms. This has saved major amount of foreign exchange for the Chinese government. The savings for the government have been in excess of 50 billion US dollars over the 6-7 years. So this is why this particular reforms become very important. Secondly, this particular reform has reduced the prices for the common Chinese man and also improved the access of the medicine for the common man. There was a time when anti-cancer medicines were so expensive on the Chinese market. A lot of people used to depend on importing these kind of medicines from either India or Bangladesh or some other country where they were relatively cheaper. But because of these initiatives of the Chinese government, medicines have become very affordable and accessibility has improved significantly for the Chinese patient. But at the same time, this particular reform has been very not so good for a lot of the Chinese companies as well. So the cost has been reduced. So a lot of companies, Chinese companies, struggle to really survive in this low cost environment. Secondly, the quality expectations and the regulatory expectations have been very high in terms of GMP. So because of that, the cost has increased significantly for the Chinese companies as well. So this becomes a major problem and a lot of companies are really struggling. The government is also recognizing, and this is one of the reasons, what you mentioned correctly, is price will no longer be the only factor. If you see some of the recent VBPs also, some of the winners have really struggled to supply the product in spite of winning the bids. So the government also realizes that, okay, companies may actually bid very low in order to win the VBP tenders, but are they really capable of supplying the product on the scale and on the quality that the China government is expecting? So the government has also recognized that there are some loopholes in the current VBP system, and that is why the rules are being changed. So I think going ahead, yes, price will be important. I'm not saying price will not, but at the same time, ability of the company to continuously supply without causing a problem to the patient at the end of the day is going to be more important as well.
And now it is still a time of the pharmaceutical companies going global. As you've been working in many different companies in different countries, what do you think companies should do to shape a new drug brand image with international competitiveness? How can they enhance brand awareness and reputation in overseas markets through academic promotion and local collaborations?
So I have been in China for a very long time, and I have seen the evolution of the Chinese companies. A lot of companies which were very local are now going global. So there are some precautions that a lot of these companies need to take. Yes, technical strength and doing good on R&D is one thing. Discovering new drugs, clinical trials, conduct, a lot of these things are important. But at the end of the day, you have to remember that each market is very different. There are perceptions in different markets are different compared to perceptions within China. So it becomes very important for the company to communicate what the company stands for. What are the ideals for which the company stands for? What is the company working towards? Yes, it is working towards a new drug, but what is its goal? How is it trying to support the patients in different countries? Patients in different countries may have unique requirements. So it becomes very important for the local Chinese companies to also focus on building their brand. They may have a brand in China, but not necessary that the same brand could be communicated well enough in other countries. So it becomes very important to take possibly help of some local collaborations who understand the local market better in order to establish the brand awareness, communicate with the local physicians how the company intends to support the patients in any therapeutic area, not just the drugs, but what are the other initiatives the companies are trying to do. How is it increasing the awareness among the patients as well? So these are different things that the company would need to focus in addition to the main product itself. Communication is the key for success in any market, and building a brand and communicating what the brand stands for is also equally important. So this is something the company should focus on.
So you also have been helping many different products to grow from R&D to commercialization. What is the art of supply chain management? How to balance quality, supply chain stabilization, and price? Could you share some experience with us?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question. This is forcing me to look back because I've been 30 years in the pharmaceutical industry now. Things have changed very, very, very significantly. I started off my career in the Indian pharmaceutical market in the generic space, and then after spending about 10 years, I had the opportunity to come to China to work on the innovative drugs, and then understand the innovative drugs is very different from the generic drugs in terms of the supply chain. Everything is so different. So supply chains have evolved very significantly, and previously the focus of the supply chain, if you see, especially for the generic drugs, almost all of them were tracing their supply chains back to China. The focus used to be on supplying, on sourcing cheap APIs at low cost, high volumes from China. That used to be the major focus for almost all pharmaceutical companies. But now the thinking has changed, especially the COVID pandemic that came in say 2020 to 2022. This was one of the things that shook the pharma industry very, very badly. So the pharma industry realized that supply chains are not just about sourcing. It is more about reliability in sourcing. It is more about resilience. When your supply chain is heavily dependent on one country, what problems you are likely to face. It showed the company what is the importance of having supply chains which are well balanced, not too heavily focused on any one country, just focused on the price. The other thing it also taught them is why global supply chains become important, where the disruptions can happen. So in spite of companies having strength in a lot of countries, when there was sudden shutdown, when there was lockdowns, as we used to call them, everywhere things were shut down. So even companies in their home countries could not manage the supply chains. So it focused on what is the importance of resilience of the supply chain. So not just within one country, but also across different countries. And then it is building not only on the cost of the supply chain, but mostly on the reliability of the supply chain to withstand shocks that can come from maybe once in a century pandemic like COVID.
Yeah, as we can see, the policies now is changing, and the supply chain of the innovative drugs, the strategies are very, very different from those in years ago. So we hope those will lead Chinese innovative drugs to a healthier market, and hope they can support many new innovative drugs to be created in the future. Thank you. It's a very nice talk with you, Dr. Hegde.
Thank you, Julia, for giving me this opportunity. I've been associated with the China pharmaceutical industry for close to 20 years now. It's been a wonderful journey for me, a big learning journey for me, working in a company like Yoming Khanda, working with a lot of the innovative drugs. Now back to again generic drugs, working with a company like Cipla. So the learning journey has been very important for me and for my growth as a pharmaceutical professional. So thanks to China for giving me this opportunity.
Yeah, also thanks for sharing today.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you, Dr.
Yeah.
Hegde.